Welcome to IVF This, episode 74, Weaponized Gratitude.
Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. I'm a mother to two beautiful and feral boys. I'm married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go.
Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing so well today. I want to take a sec and ask for a quick favor. If you are enjoying the podcast and you listen on iTunes, would you please take a moment, if you have not already, to rate and review the podcast? Ratings, and especially the reviews, help the podcast become more discoverable, so people searching IVF can find the podcast a little bit easier. I'm always grateful when you guys share the podcast on Instagram or in one of the Facebook groups. So if you see a person posting and struggling with anxiety or grief or anything like that, please let them know that there is a podcast that can show them a different way to experience this process. We want to reach as many people as possible. We want to eliminate as much suffering as possible. Also, feel free to share on social media. I've had several listeners take screenshots of the episode they're listening to and share it, like on their stories. And I think that's such a fun way to share what you're experiencing. It also helps me connect with more of you guys, which I love. All right. So that aside, today we're talking about gratitude, what it is and how it's weaponized by us and others. And I want to talk to you about how to actually cultivate gratitude to genuinely get to experience it. Let me say that gratitude is one of my favorite emotions to experience. For me, it kind of feels like a warm hug or cozy, like you're snuggled up on the couch on a cold and rainy day. Gratitude to me feels so lovely. So what is gratitude? Well, it's essentially the feeling of being thankful. At its best, it is a true appreciation and acknowledgement of how lucky we are to be alive and have all the blessings that we have. If you're listening to the podcast, the chances are that your standard of living is better than 90-ish% of the world's population. You probably live in a house where clean water comes out of the tap all the time whenever you need it. That's a luxury that most of the world can only aspire to and will maybe never experience. Talk about something to be grateful for, right? There are many beautiful things to love about gratitude. It helps with mindfulness. It helps with grounding. It's super helpful when you're developing emotional resiliency, which is what we talked about last week in last week's episode. So there are many benefits to cultivating, embracing, and experiencing gratitude. When you're focused on appreciating what you have, you feel that warm, expansive feeling in your body, right? You feel good, right? That warm, snuggly feeling on a rainy day. You may think that you're lucky. When you're focused on what you don't have and you're thinking from a place of scarcity, you often feel constrained and desperate and terrible, which is a lot of how we feel during infertility. So let's start today with this phenomenon that I see all the time within the infertility community, which I call weaponized gratitude. I should say that this exists outside of the infertility community, particularly anything in reference to grief or struggle. Even something like the loss of a pet, you'll hear people say time and time again, just be grateful for the time that you had them. And to that, I say, thank you for your attempt at compassion. And while I am grateful that I had time with them, it doesn't mean I wanted that time to end, right? That's kind of an example of how weaponized gratitude can be used against us. And like anything that someone else says, it's a reflection of their thoughts and feelings, not a reflection of some greater truth that you don't have access to. Because gratitude has so many benefits, it's totally reasonable why we would pursue it so vigorously. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, you don't have to look far to find slogans, quote, inspo posts talking about the importance of gratitude. I myself am working on an IVF mindfulness journal that will hopefully be finished and ready for you all to purchase at the kind of fall-ish time, that it actually includes a question, a daily question actually, on gratitude. But what I see a lot from clients and others in the infertility community is that we have this Weaponized gratitude, we use it against ourselves. Like we try to layer on gratitude on top of a negative emotion and think that it's like some stain removing solution that will take away the negative and uncomfortable feelings. Like gratitude is some Resolve carpet cleaning product. We use gratitude as a weapon against ourselves when we experience something negative. And then we shame ourselves for not feeling more grateful. And then we try to produce a feeling of gratitude. Yeah, that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. Shame is like the polar opposite of gratitude. So if you're trying to access gratitude on top of shame, I got to tell you, that well's going to be dry. And this process, this thing that we try to do is insanely pervasive. I can think of at least 3 to 4 mini sessions that I've done with people in very recently that we've covered this topic. And just a side note, I have opened up my calendar more to accommodate the requests for the free mini sessions. So you can just head to my Instagram link in my bio and schedule directly there, or you can go to my website, www.ivfthiscoaching.com, and click work with me. Remember, it's completely complimentary coaching call, but I digress. So let me give you an example of how we do this to ourselves. So here is an example from my own experience. My husband and I have been fortunate enough to privately pay for 2 rounds and 3 transfers. I often joke that we have about $65,000 worth of children. I understand that that is not a privilege that many have. Now, I'm not saying that it was super easy and that we barely noticed. No. We took on debt, we used savings, etc. But when we were going through pretty much our first round, I remember thinking, I should feel better because at least we can pay for it. And there's a lot of women's couples, people that cannot. And while that is true, it was not particularly helpful to me to think that way because I was basically telling myself to sit down and shut up, to put my big girl pants on and quit bitching. And this was after years of infertility, trauma, shame, and everything that had compounded over that time, as if the ability to financially pay was some sort of bullshit consolation prize for this experience. As if nothing else but the fact that we could pay for it mattered. And that was how I weaponized it against myself. Now, I had help, believe me, because I was not the only person with this belief system. I was hearing it from all sorts of people. Oh, how exciting that you guys are doing IVF. How great is it that you can pay for it? It's true. But I can also think of a million other things that I would have rather have done with that money if getting knocked up had been easier for us. I think this is one of the reasons that I was incredibly angry throughout this time. I was just gaslighting myself over and over saying, well, the other stuff doesn't really matter because we can afford this. We're doing it now. And at this point, I didn't spend any time acknowledging what we had actually experienced and that emotional experience had compounded over time. At that point, it had already been a few years. So it was like, oh, we have this path, so the slate should be wiped completely clean. And then what we all do when we don't feel gratitude or only feel gratitude is that we make it mean something terrible about ourselves. I made it mean that I was greedy, entitled, that I didn't deserve this because I wasn't grateful. Yeah, again, not how this works. You cannot shame or should yourself into gratitude. When you do that, you're just using it as a weapon against yourself. You are not going to feel grateful when you're using it this way. You're going to feel stressed out, ashamed, feel sorry for yourself, and you won't even really know why. Anytime you tell yourself that you should feel grateful, and it's the should that is kind of the operative, super powerful word in that sentence, and should just produces a feeling of obligation or shame, like any other should would. Anytime you're telling yourself that you should or should not think or feel a certain way, you are creating a moral value on it. You're creating a feeling of obligation, and then you're creating a feeling of shame for not living up to that obligation that you just kind of mentally invented. So if you notice that you're telling yourself that you're grateful, but you don't actually feel grateful, it's likely that you're trying to use gratitude as like a spackle over some feeling or thought that you aren't really acknowledging. And usually that's because you aren't willing to have the feeling that you're having or think that your original negative thought means something about you. So, in other words, if you're afraid that that thought that you have about your situation, about your partner, about your infertility means that you're an ungrateful person, well, you're going to be afraid of that. So it's like you have this meta thought, right? About your thought. At first, you think, why can't I get pregnant as easily as Sally or whatever? You feel angry. And then you think, oh my God, I'm such a terrible person. I shouldn't be thinking this way. And then you feel ashamed. And then you think the solution is to try to be grateful instead. Again, you're just trying to plaster over the negative experience, the negative emotion with gratitude. But really, what you want to do is look at your thoughts and feelings. See what's in there and notice that you don't have to make any of it mean anything about you. Because the truth is, I was grateful. Of course, I was grateful. I was grateful that we had the means to pay back a loan that we were even eligible to take out. I was grateful that we had income and savings. Of course, I was grateful. But I was also feeling a lot of other things around the fact that we were in this situation where we were deciding between IVF and the possibility of more kids, or not doing IVF and the very remote possibility of having more kids. And notice that I didn't say we had to do IVF. Remember, I always want you to claim your power and your choice wherever you have it. But we have this idea in our culture that feelings are like a monolith, that we should only feel grateful or happy or hopeful or whatever it is. And that's just not how the human experience works. So I was shaming myself for not feeling a feeling that I was feeling because I didn't think I was feeling it enough. Do you see how ass backwards that logic is in our brain? Like, folks, the math ain't mathin'. And so this is what we do. Instead of dealing with the anger, the grief, the frustration, the insert literally any emotion you might be experiencing, we layer on shame and disingenuous or false gratitude. It's a damn mess. No wonder we feel terrible. You cannot, and I repeat, cannot shame yourself into gratitude. And this is true whether the original thought was yours or if someone offered this thought to you. Like in my pet loss example at the beginning of this episode. People will offer you those thoughts. That is essentially just them saying words. Those words can't affect you until you believe it, until you accept that what they are saying is more correct than what you had originally believed. When you agree with them, that is when you have weaponized someone else's words against yourself. Gratitude is an emotion, just like anger, love, joy, resentment. There is no hierarchy of its importance. So therefore, it is not a reflection of your moral character if you are not able to easily access gratitude. It's just a feeling. It is created by our thoughts. It feels amazing, but it doesn't mean anything about you as a person. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. So if you want to experience true gratitude, you have to take it down off of the pedestal. It's not a moral requirement. It is not a spiritual obligation, and it is not a workaround for managing your actual thoughts. You cannot try to spackle gratitude on top of negative emotion to get rid of it. You don't have to feel grateful. You get to decide how you want to think and feel. And if you do want to experience true gratitude, you have to be willing to be present with your negative emotions. What if you were grateful for being a human with all the mess that comes with it and acknowledging that mess? What if you were grateful for not being perfect? What if you were grateful for your imperfections, for your humanness, for all of those negative thoughts and feelings, and that you have the tools to work on them? If you could be grateful for all of that, then you could easily be present with yourself. The most important thing is to be honest with yourself about what you're thinking and feeling. Don't make any thought or feeling unacceptable or mean anything about you. When you do that, you can't ever tell yourself the truth, and you'll never try to paper over your experience with emotions that you think sound better. That is the opposite of being grateful for your life and grateful for yourself. Remind yourself, I'm grateful because I get to experience the emotions. I get to be funny and messy and beautiful. It's all part of being human. We get like a buffet of emotions that we get to choose. You always have a choice. And I will continue to remind each and every one of you of that whenever and wherever I can. Okay, that is what I have for you, my beautiful friends. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard and want to learn more, head over to ivfthiscoaching.com. That's www.ivfthiscoaching.com.